Maggie is going to say a couple of words just about the B4 project, which is something that Maggie, I and Julie are involved in to do with.
Okay, because B4 is hosting this event today and tomorrow. So the B4 project, we're now in our 14th year, and we have existed really to try and conserve the native honeybee, which is the black bee, sometimes called the black bee. The native honeybee is supposed to be the only one that is native to the British Isles and to Northern Europe. So, but now our bees are all mixed up, and so we've been part of the community that have been trying to preserve that population of bees. By helping the black bee, we hope that we're helping honeybees in general. You've been aware that there are bees actually managing to live on their own in trees or in buildings, in cracks, and we can refer to these as free-living bees. And this symposium today and tomorrow is about free-living bees. The B4 project is taking more interest in that. We've been aware of them for a while, but we now think, well, if we're always trying to conserve the black bee, maybe those free-living bees are not all black. In fact, we know they aren't. There's some of the genetic studies being done already, and they're very often hybridized, mixed with others. And yet, they seem to be surviving. We know a lot of them are surviving. And you'll hear more about that in the next 2 days. We've got people who can bear good witness to that.
Okay, and so where that fits in with Newton is about 14 years ago I got a hive, and it was a hybrid hive, and it grew amazingly within 3 months. And within that 3 months, I've always tried to push my interests widely, and I found that some people in darkest Cornwall had Cornish black bees, and I thought that was more up my street. I'm interested in native species, I'm interested in local apple trees and pear trees and things, and so I thought, well, I need a local bee. Anyway, within 3 months I decided I'd swap my bees, and the afternoon that the community orchard was going to take the bees away, they swarmed, and it was an amazing occurrence. We were standing in the yard out here, and they went straight over our heads, and it was just an amazing experience. And anyway, the beekeepers were happy to take away my large hive, which had grown, had 26 queen cells in it, we found. And obviously I hadn't been inspecting as rigorously as I could have done. And they took it away, and then the next day James Kilty sold me some of his black bees, which were entirely different. And they were small, and they were kind and nice, and I thought, oh, that's very interesting. And I got involved with taking a deeper look. We took some of their wings and we looked at wing morphometry, and I managed to squeeze myself into a thorough research project where they looked at markers, and it was a secret bit of research that they were saving to put in for a big grant, and I managed to catch the senior molecular biologist who was about to disappear off somewhere, and we indeed found that Cornwall had some native bees that were quite apis mellifera. And from there we went on a whole journey which we're at right now, which looks at more genetics, and but all through this we were 20 years in this farm, and the 20 years in the farm we took over. Kate went to agricultural college, and so we had sheep and geese and ducks and bullocks, and we had everything except for ostriches and llamas, and too many of everything. So we had 20 ewes that produced 40 offspring that overwintered because they were flins, and then in the spring they produced another 40. So the place was, and then it would rain a bit and the place turned into slop. And during this period Hugh Tyler from High Level Stewardship said, I managed to get involved in a high level stewardship, and he said, why don't you plant up some orchards, reconstruct some Devon banks, put in a cherry-lined avenue for permissory access, and do various other things. And of course, as soon as we did that, we couldn't keep the number of stock that we could keep, and as soon as we did that, we went on a totally different journey. And reflecting back the 20 years before that, Robin Tevison and Rosemary Tevison, some of you who might know, Robin's now Lord Tevison, he's the Liberal Democrat, and they were here, and they were very kind to the land. They kept too many stock, but they didn't put any fertilizers or pesticides or anything on the land, and they planted a block of trees that joined the estuary's trees in a continuous valley. So they kind of did nice things. We're going to do about an hour and a half where we'll walk, and what we'll do is we'll do 3 circuits out and around, coming back here. So if anybody wants to drop off at any time. We've also got Matthew and Filipe who are hiking a log hive up a tree down the footpath, and then later on at 4 o'clock they'll be putting up a rocket hive up in this orchard here. So what I just wanted to show you here was just a couple of things. This is the lawn, which I used to have when the kids were young. We had a cricket pitch here, so there was 22 yards here, and we could bowl. Well, we're just not going to be doing that anymore. We did a couple of small opera things here, and we could have 60 people in the garden. We dug the garden up, and we sowed, I think, 50 species of wildflower seed, and we planted honeysuckle, up trees. There's apples, plums, pears. This was oxeye daisies when I was kind of getting oxeye daisy seeds. So I'd take the seeds and we take them out onto the field, and as you can see, there's kifscapes climbing up this tree, and behind us you can see the cherry trees. And again, all of this stuff was planted when we planted these in the last 20 years. So let's keep going. Okay, so this is a permissory footpath that goes down to the National Trust. And 20 years ago we put these cherries in. They're 2 local species, the Luscombe and Burkham on wild cherry rootstock.
The big long 4-wheeler.
The thing is, I'm going to pause very long here, but this is what it kind of ends up looking like when you have very little grass, lots of yellow rattle, very short swarth, and it pretty much doesn't get much bigger than, well, it gets a bit bigger, but not much. So this is what we're going to. So keep going. I showed you a high fertility wildflower meadow, that's in the garden, but you have to treat it differently. So you have to scythe it, take the stuff off, scythe it, take the stuff off, until you get right down to phosphate level of, I don't know, it's 1 or 0, it's 1 or 10, I've got the sort of sample things, and at that level you can then start mucking around with wildflower meadows, and some of the bits of the wildflower meadows here we're never going to take hay off again. And so there's a kind of a battle. How do you keep the fertility down, and how do you keep it a wildflower meadow? And yeah, that's why having 20 different rooms doing different things in each little place are developing biodiversities, and they all do different things at different paces, and you just have to go for the ride. So National Trust here, fantastic. The stars are building leaky dams, and they are brilliant because they've taken all the grants and they're putting in leaky dams. I think you've got a whole load of stuff coming, and as you probably noticed, stuff starts falling into it. Hurrah! And I don't mind a bit of ash dieback. Everybody goes, oh, ash dieback, what are we going to do? We've got to cut all these trees down. No, we don't. We need dead standing wood. It's fantastic. So this was Narnia. 20 years ago, this was a pine plantation, and they chop the pines down, and you'll see the stumps underneath, and all of this is regrowth. How is that possible in 20 years? Right, so to the steep field. So cowslips come in clumps, and the clumps are either male or female, because when they divide they stay the same sex. So I had 6 clumps, and 3 of them were one sex and 3 of them were the other sex, and I forgot about the sex thing, and I put one of the clumps in the garden, which you saw earlier. And almost certainly it was a female. So the seeds from that were probably hybrids with primroses. So here we have a hybrid primrose with the wrong flower, and here's a cowslip.
Because there, I don't want any more honeybees.
Marine scientist before that.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So I went to Michael from Ensley and said, you know, I'll have one of everything. And he gave me 87 different species of apple trees. He gave me 30 cherry trees, which are of 2 species on wild cherry rootstock, Luscum and Burkham. And then for this field, this was going to be the sort of cottage garden thing. And I said, oh, I'll have one of everything else that you've got. Oh. So we've got walnuts, we've got medlar, we've got, I don't know, there was a green gage in here somewhere, but I never found one. So in front of us is a new Devon bank. And I'm going to show you two new Devon banks. They were put in 18 years ago. And Bobby is going to talk a little bit about hedge laying. I won't spoil that.
So my name's Bobby and I'm a hedge layer here at Newton Farm. So hedge laying goes back probably many thousands of years. It's hard to find the original evidence of hedge laying in this country, but it's been a way of managing the countryside and the wildlife for essentially thousands of years. So what I'm doing here at Newton Farm is there's a lot of overstood hedges, which means hedgerows which have existed for quite a long time, but they've had a chance to get up and get really big and almost unmanageable, and I'm here to bring them back into life. They become these real haven for wildlife, for insects, for plants, for mosses, for lichens, for birds, for mammals. And when you have, especially in this country, massive areas of pasture which hasn't got a lot of diversity, the main bit of wildlife diversity lives on the hedges and the edges. They also work as nature corridors, and the way that kind of happens is rather than necessarily everything passing through them, the smaller mammals will pass through them, but animals and birds will use them for shade and for shelter, and also to pass them by really without having to cross across fields where they can be in danger of predators and, yeah, essentially humans as well, really. Yeah, the whole land, apart from this one here and the one down that bank, are all, I couldn't even give an age, but like these ones at the back are very old Devon style hedges. Could be Cornish, but I think Cornish go more into like hedges with not much going on top apart from sort of small vegetation. So it's a bit of a Devon style down here. And the bank which is behind you there, and the banks at perimeter, the footpath, tend to be really overstood, which means they've just been standing for 30, 40 years, where they've just got really overgrown, and to a certain extent if they get too big they end up looking like this. Yes. Which, there's no laying. You either leave them to do their thing, or you just, a lot of people would just say they want to have a hedge, would cut them down and let them re-sprout, which is great because they will. You can cut them down and all these broadleaf trees will just absolutely flourish again, and you lay the second bit. This is an example here of a hedge which was planted by, as Andrew said, by Andrew and Kate about 18 years ago. So all this wall was built, so it's turf or sort of soil in the middle, and then it's stone banked on the outside, then planted up with hawthorn and blackthorn. The general practice would be you do what would be called a steeping or a pleaching cut, which is when you would cut through, so you can see it's all getting really overgrown now, which is great. You do a cut which comes in diagonally, and you cut through usually about 3/4, 4/5 of the way through the tree, still leaving a really good amount of sapwood. And as you lean it down, avoiding cracking up the tree, you're trying to get the crackled split to run down, which is in turn is keeping all the sapwood, which is going to feed the rest of the tree, so that's going to keep alive. I'm really proud of this one. And the other one down there is an example of when you have something which is really old and overstood, you've got to kind of make it work the best you can. Some people will just go in and just go there, take their chainsaw, take it all down to the base level and say, I'll come back in 10 years. But because I wanted to, with Andrew and Kate, wanted to come down and try and do something, I've kind of done the best I can there. And we'll see what regrows. That's it, what comes back in next year, in the 2 years time, 3 years time, and hopefully 10 years time we'll be back here when it's all a bit more yeah, uniform and be able to relay it.
So I'm just going to say here, for anybody who's doing wildflower meadows and they think that it's too fertile so they shouldn't do it, don't stand on me, onions. This is a wildflower meadow here on fertile land. You can do it in all sorts of places. So this has knapweed and it has oxeye daisy, and it just has a different species mix. And then I scythe it once a year. The orchard you went through only gets scythed once a year and raked, and that's all that happens. And that's all that happens here. So we're gonna nip in. I'm going to show you the solar panels that are going up, and then we're going to go and see a little field that has sheep in it, just to show you how awful sheep are for sward, because you'll see that there's a monoculture of just grass, and it's been treated in exactly the same way as the rest of the farm. It's been harrowed, it's been seeded, it even had pigs in it one year and taken down to absolute nothing and then seeded with wildflower mix, and it's come back to green grass because it's got 4 sheep in it. The idea finally will be that we'll have a mix of pig, we'll have a mix of bullock, and we'll have a mix of pony. And we'll borrow certain things at certain times, and they'll maintain the swards at the rate that it's at. I've got one apple tree we call the Christmas tree, and it has apples just into January, and there's stuff on the ground that carries the birds, the field fares and the redwings over into February, and I just love it. Apples on the ground. What more could you give for nature?
Yeah, you can come closer if you like. So what we're going to build now is this one sits on legs, and so we need to build a rig so we can hoist it up, sort of thing.
Or are you trying to make a hole?
No, it's an anchor. Well, I mean, there's things to show you, but sometimes.
Got a video on his website. Yeah, no.
Quite cold.
It'll come more frustrated. I mean, we're looking at the sense capabilities of the. Here, Matt. Do you want to get the top one?
Yeah.
Casings, the molds. So we go, okay, well, a tree is wounded. It starts to release these organic compounds, volatile organic compounds, and it draws the bees in. The bees come in, chew all the insides, get rid of all the rot, and lay the propolis on the inside. And propolis is antifungal, antibacterial, so it helps the tree to heal. It can put all its energy in reclosing the wound. And
Yeah, so this, you can see inside this one, I've hollowed it out. I use a chainsaw mixture between a chainsaw and a gouge, long gouges to hollow. But then I've gone in again and roughened the wall up, and that'll encourage the bees to put even more propolis. And what we've seen in the wild is just how much propolis bees will put into a nest. And we can show you. I brought some samples with me in the shed there. But this it'll be absolutely red with propolis, and also because of this insulation you don't get any condensation, so there's no blackness, there's no mold, it's just a clean, sterile cavity, and the bees will be working that. They'll be crawling up and down and creating an atmosphere of propolis which they'll then breathe in, and so yeah, it's key for their health. So that's kind of what we're doing really, is just setting up a sort of proxy cavity.
Just some research and some reading, and one of the most important products that bees have is the microbiome for their stomach. Yeah, hollowed out.
To bring the propolis back, and is it 2 or 3 bees to take the propolis off each?
If anybody wants to see something funky, have a play with this. You want fun? No, they're not. Yeah, and you can get as far as you have to. Exactly.
now.
From time to time they move animals between them.
Yeah, it's saying
And
it's saying
what
something about that.
they're doing now is
I don't know how you.
With a ladder.
This back. Actually, Jilly, you haven't had a good stroke.
Matt.
High silica, it's just the smoothest.
It needs a cuddle, Jilly.
What type of reeds are they, Matt?
Norfolk. Yeah, so I go up to Norfolk and, you know, it's just all materials have something. So this is chest. Is that straight? Was that looking straight? Is that good?
That's it.
Well, Julie's on it, but no one else has. Anyway.